Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Week 4 live session for critical thinking. Thank you so much for your patience there and waiting. I had a small technical problem. Looks like we're good to go now. So please type in hi to the chat box if you haven't already. This allows me to make sure that you get counted as credit for attending our live session this evening. I will begin as usual by previewing what we're going to cover tonight. So we are going to talk about our checklist for the week. We are going to discuss inductive reasoning and the transition from where we've been at, deductive reasoning and deductive logic, to inductive reasoning. And I think you're going to really enjoy tonight's session because it's really thought-provoking. And if you're really thinking about how to dissect arguments, you've probably been kind of wondering until now, how do I really go out and attack? Hopefully through our lesson so far, we've talked about logic and how to take apart someone's faulty logic. Now we're going to be talking about generalizations and inductive reasoning and how you can pull apart someone's argument that way. In coming weeks, we will also be covering logical fallacies, which are all kinds of ways that you can be tricked into trying to be persuaded into believing things. So, so open up your minds for this evening and listen, and do take a lot of notes, and we will pause for questions here and there. So let's start by talking about our checklist. This week we have our reading in chapter 3, which is on reality assumptions, page 80. Oh, oops, I am on the wrong week. Welcome to week 4. Was 1 week behind, but now I'm caught up. Right, so our checklist for week 4. Just to let you know, to back up just a moment before we get into the checklist, I did make an announcement, and as you can see here on our course home, and I don't think this is an issue for any of those that are with us tonight, because you guys are not the ones having a hard time accessing the live sessions. How do I know that? Because you're here in the live session with me now. So, but I have posted the recordings of these sessions to YouTube and put them on the front page of our course, so you can easily access the recordings right from the front page, and I will continue to do that. We'll need probably about a day to get those up, so expect those hopefully on Tuesdays after these live sessions on Monday evening. Okay, now back to week 4. So we do have our reading. We're actually moving on to chapter 4, which is the inductive arguments chapter, and chapter 5, inductive generalizations, controlled studies, and analogies. We have the online lesson presentation. Let me just say, for your presentations, I've heard from 1 or 2 students you've had a problem with accessing the presentations. Those will be accessed, of course, by clicking right here on presentation, lesson 4.1 in this case, presentation. But the thing that's going on apparently is different browsers have different versions of Java. And so the easiest solution seems to be, if you have an alternative browser installed, try using that one to access eCollege and see if you can access the presentation from there. I have Chrome installed on my computer, and for some reason with my Firefox, I cannot access the presentation. But when I switch to Chrome, there they are, just fine. So also Internet Explorer is a option that works as well. So if you're having issues with those, then you'll want to try a different browser first, and then hopefully, if that doesn't work though, do let me know. There can be other issues sometimes independently with your accessing your presentation. We also have the discussion forum, which this week is on generalization. We have our assignment. I will be covering the discussion forum and the assignment in detail after we talk about inductive reasoning. We have a journal entry this week, which are your top 3 learning gems, or a learning gem is just simply something that you learn. Hopefully the thing that the largest thing that you learn, your key takeaways, your aha moments, they're sometimes called. And then you want to also include in your journal entry, how did you apply these learning gems in your daily life? And what are you most grateful for today? And you are, of course, submitting your journals at the top here in the journal area of the course. Can someone indicate, please, if you can hear me okay and if you can see the desktop? I just want to make sure that the desktop, once in a while we do these recordings and we look back and, oh, I didn't share the desktop and nobody said anything. So you can see the checklist we're looking at now. Somebody please indicate you can see the checklist and hear what I am saying. Okay. I'm getting at least one yes. Okay. Yeah. Good, good. Very good. So all I'm showing is the checklist. I'm not actually showing my handsome face. So sorry about that. I don't usually do that. I don't feel the need to turn on the webcam. So the next part of the checklist is the post-assessment quiz. So this is the one, this is an even-numbered week, so this quiz counts towards your final grade. The pre-assessments do not. So the pre-assessments kind of give you a, large picture of what you know about the topic, so that you should be taking notes and you should be kind of gathering the information on what do I not know on this quiz. So if anything makes you feel uncomfortable on the pre-assessment quiz, definitely write that down. Definitely be taking notes on that. All right. Hopefully that sound is a little bit better. I turned up the microphone level, so I hope that that makes it a little bit better. And of course, we have the live session, which is right now. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about inductive reasoning. So far, we spent a lot of time last week and the week before talking about deductive reasoning. So let's take a look at this slide. I'm not going to go into full screen mode just yet here because I want to show you. All right. So inductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning is where we are trying to convince someone that we have evidence that supports our conclusion beyond a reasonable doubt. Okay? So that means that you should believe this because I have supported it beyond a reasonable doubt. Now the interesting thing here though, does that mean that it is absolutely going to happen? So in inductive reasoning, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to happen. So it could be less than 100% certain. So evidence is strong support, but it is still not 100% certain. So in deductive logic, we said that all puppies are dogs. Buster is a dog, or Buster is a puppy, therefore Buster is a dog. So that is called entailment. That means because I have asserted that the first two premises are true, and in all cases those are true, the conclusion is entailed. So it must happen. It is guaranteed. It is definitely supported by the premises. But in inductive reasoning, we're saying that based on what I'm telling you, you could conclude that my conclusion is correct. So I will go into the slide mode here. So in inductive reasoning, we have to use evidence to support our conclusion. And the strength of your conclusion is based on the quality of the evidence that you're using to support your conclusion. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about using statistics. Things like it is 80% chance of rain today. Does that mean that it's absolutely going to happen? No, it means that it is likely to happen. Okay? So on inductive reasoning, here's how the reasoning would work. So let's say we have a cycle and we're going over a piece of the road and we hit a bump and there's a misfire. Okay? So that has happened before. And then on the next cycle, there's a bump and then there's a misfire. Okay? Not describing what is exactly going on here, just look at the logic. Then, on the next time, we had a cycle happen, and then there was smooth road, so there was no bumps, and it did not misfire. Interesting. It seems like when it bumps, it misfires, and when it doesn't bump, it doesn't misfire. Third time. Third bump is a misfire. Okay? So what's your conclusion? So why don't you type a possible conclusion into the chat? Let's see how many people are paying attention. So we have a cycle, bump, misfire, cycle, bump, misfire, cycle, smooth road, it does not misfire, and then cycle, third bump, misfire. So what's our conclusion from this? Anyone? What will we conclude if we observe that every time there's a cycle, or every time there's a bump, there's a misfire? And when there wasn't a bump, there was no misfire. So what are we concluding? Good. If there is a bump, there is a misfire. Excellent job, Alyssa. All right? Good. Deductive reasoning, on the other hand, right? So in inductive reasoning, we're saying that based on everything we've seen so far, very good. Everybody's giving the right answer now. Everything we've seen so far is we've observed this. It's the same thing as saying, my girlfriend is going to like that I brought her flowers tonight. So on the way home, I'm going to stop and I'm going to get flowers and bring them home, and she's going to like it. And somebody may say, well, how do you know she's going to like it? And I will say, because every time I've ever given her flowers in the past, she liked it. Therefore, I'm pretty sure that if I give her flowers at night, she's going to like it again. So that is the reasoning. That is called inductive reasoning. Based on the past instances that have been observed, we can predict the future now because we know what happened in the past. Right? So that's inductive reasoning. It doesn't guarantee your conclusion. It just says that it is a likely conclusion. So be thinking about that. If you want to tear apart someone's argument, then you can go into the fact that these are never 100% certain. So there is always some level of uncertainty, right? So that is where the fun comes in analyzing the argument. All right. So in deductive reasoning, remember that we say something like the horn is powered exclusively by electricity from the battery. The battery is dead. So what would the conclusion be there? Anyone? If the horn only gets powered from the battery and the battery is dead, the conclusion must be that no, we cannot use the horn. Right? We cannot use the horn because it's only powered by the battery and the battery is dead. See how that conclusion is entailed, right? There's no way you're going to use the horn because it's powered exclusively from the battery and the battery is dead. And you can say, but yeah, but you can use a different battery. No. You already stated powered exclusively by electricity from this battery. Okay. So inductive reasoning takes an instance of something that happened in the past and generalizes it to the future. So induction can be defined as drawing generalizations from known facts. And these are typically based on research and statistical evidence. So Barack Obama is currently approved at 52%, say, and I just made that up. And if you ever hear the saying that 82.7% of statistics are all made up, you know what's going on there. And inductive reasoning is finding truth by making observations from the past. So we're going to use statistics, and we can say things like one candidate is 57% likely to get elected with a margin of error of 5%. Okay? What we're going to talk about now, how you can pull apart that argument. So if it's not 100% likely to happen, there has to be some level of unlikeliness. Right? So what's causing the unlikeliness? And there is where you can really start to imagine the things that could make this conclusion unlikely, and thereby tear down. If there's a chance that it's not going to happen, then perhaps if this variable exists, that's when it doesn't happen. So why do we use statistics about the world, and why do we always claim this and that with statistics? It kind of gives us a sense of control over the unknown, right? Oh, well, 82% of people in my neighborhood like this restaurant. So, I think that helps me make a better informed decision. If 82% of the people that live in my neighborhood like the restaurant, maybe I'll try it too, and maybe I'll make it 83%. It gives us the ability to make predictions and decisions. Right? It informs our decision making, and it connects the different patterns that we see in our lives, and allows us to feel like we have control over the future. Now, statistical evidence is based on typically data that is collected. And we make statistical generalizations from this data. And data is typically from a sample. Right? So in inductive reasoning, what we want to find out, the characteristic of interest, like what percentage of the people in my neighborhood like this restaurant. And that's the characteristic of the people in my neighborhood that I'm interested in finding out. So, or it could be, will they support my ballot measure? Okay, so I want to know if the people in the neighborhood will support my ballot measure. That's the characteristic about those people that I want to find out. Would they support a measure? The target population I want to know about is all of the people. So let's say I have a measure on the ballot and all of the people in the county can vote. So I would, unless I'm going to ask every single person in the county if they're going to vote, I will not be able to be 100% accurate, or how they're going to vote, I should say. So we have to take what's called a sample of that. And so maybe we'll go ask 100 people. And out of that 100 people, we generalize to the world, to our target population. Right. So the sample is the first part where we can really take apart someone's argument. So if I tell you that, well, I think that Tim Short is going to become mayor because 70% of the people that I called said that we would elect Tim Short as mayor. So great, I'm going to become mayor. But if you take a look at the sample, right, maybe that sample was people just in one particular neighborhood. Or maybe I only called people during the hours of 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. So that's only in the morning. And that might be, is that a representative sample? Maybe I just asked a few people on the corner at the gas station. So would that be a representative sample? So what we're really trying to get at here is, how much can we be sure that our target population is going to make a decision or has a certain characteristic based on our tiny little sample? So what really becomes important is how representative of the target population is your little sample of people. Okay? If you only called people that are home between the hours of 8 a.m. and 12 p.m., then you eliminated a whole big giant amount of the population. And sure, so you might be popular with those people who are home during those hours, but what about other people who get home later or who don't have those hours for some reason? So it's not really necessarily representative. So when we think of sample, we have to think about some characteristics of the sample. Number one is the size. So did I survey enough people? Did I only ask, you know how you'll see voted best burger in the South Bay, right? Well, don't you wonder, voted by who? You know, it could be by the owner of the restaurant, right? Where? It doesn't say where they voted, right? So if the person who owns the restaurant, their mom comes in and say, I vote this to be the best burger, right? Then you can put in your window, voted best burger, right? So statistics, very, very interesting and can be manipulated quite a bit. So you have to think about, okay, so where did you get your sample size? Or what are we talking about? If I was to say 90% of the people will vote for candidate A in the next election, and I'm talking about the presidential election, but I only asked people in Los Angeles, would that be a representative sample? No way, right? Because we're trying to generalize to all of the people in the United States of America. And so if I just ask the people that live on my street, I'm not getting a very representative sample of the entire United States. Okay. So sample size is very important. It must be representative. So it must have similar characteristics to the characteristics of the target population. So you think about things like gender, right? If in our community we have 51% females and 49% males, right, then I would expect that my sample size was not just 6 men, right? It should be roughly the same percentages of gender in my sample that exist in my target population. Okay? Same thing with things like age and ethnicity, education, socioeconomic status. So all of these things, they must be characteristic of the entire target population. So how do we do that? We must have something called random sampling. So you must be random in your sample. So if I just look at 5 names in the phone book, is that random sampling? If I just say, okay, I'm going to take the names from Joe Smith to the next Joe Smith and the next Joe Smith, I'm going to take these 5 Joe Smiths, and since I randomly picked them out of the phone book, that gives me a random sample. Would you say that qualifies as a representative sample? Definitely not. So our sample has to have the same kind of characteristics as the target population so that we can have confidence in our generalization. Right? So that's how you can really pick apart an argument based on inductive logic. All right, so let's take a look at our assignment and discussion for this week. All right, first of all, for our discussion for this week, we have a question about inductive logic. We are saying, how can we make an inference about a target group based on a sample? All right, so that's really what we just discussed. How can you predict things about a target group? So this is things like, when you think of target group, think about the entire population of the country when it comes to the presidential election, right? How can you make an inference about that based on a sample? So I'm looking for things like you must make sure that the sample is representative of the target group and that it has the same makeup of characteristics as the target group, and that it must be a large enough sample. So I'm not going to want to see a sample of 5 people, right? I want to see a sample of 20,000 people randomly selected from a computer out of all the people in the United States. And then you could still argue that, you know what, it's not really random because it was selected by the computer, which means only the people who are somehow in this computer database were eligible for the study. So those people who live in the United States who are not on the grid, if you will, then they're not going to be included in your count. So you could also argue that that's not necessarily representative. So it becomes fun because you can always take apart the argument, right? We can say that our sample was representative, but you can always say, yeah, I'm not so sure. And this is what happens in science. So when psychologists find out something about human behavior and they publish it in their journal, then the scientists start arguing about your sample size and was it a representative sample, and did you do your research correctly? And the next thing is, why is it necessary that the sample size is large enough and that the sample is random? So why do we have to take those into account? And of course, you're talking about making sure that your sample is representative of the target population. And then discuss inductive probability. What does it mean and what role does it play in generalization? Okay, so we're just talking about, based on the fact that I have observed this in the past, it is likely to happen again, and that's called inductive probability. So it is probable that my conclusion is true. Now for our assignment. We also have assignment 4.1 this week, and that is, as a beat reporter for the Smallville Sun-Times, it's your responsibility to cover all stories related to the Smallville school district. As new school superintendent, the first new superintendent in more than 20 years, was just voted into office and is promising wide reform of the town's decrepit educational facilities. The superintendent has also made clear his intention to begin construction on a new baseball and recreation center. He believes that this kind of reform is what Smallville needs to raise school attendance. Sorry, I am doing 2 screens at once and I am not having one screen cooperate. So sorry about that. So he believes that this kind of reform is what Smallville needs to raise school attendance next fall. Interviews conducted with Smallville residents over a period of 2 weeks resulted in the following observations. In a random survey of 1,000 residents of Smallville, 75% of respondents said that they supported the decision to build a baseball stadium. We can reliably assume that the majority of the population supports the project. Okay, so that's one argument based on this person running for superintendent. We also have almost everyone in student government at Smallville High supports the new recreation center. Therefore, most of the student body supports the new recreation center. All right, so you have two arguments that you can analyze here based on this person running for superintendent. Number one is that 1,000 people, out of 1,000 people sampled, 75% said that they would support the baseball stadium. So the conclusion drawn from that, supposedly, is we can reliably assume that the majority of the population supports the project. So your goal in your paper this week is to answer these questions in step 2. Are these strong or weak arguments? And you want to have a section for each argument. So one for the 1,000 residents, 75%, and also one for the student government argument. Are these strong or weak arguments? Why or why not? Can you establish any generalizations based on the aforementioned arguments? So what can you generalize based on if you know that 75% of the respondents said that they support the decision to build the baseball stadium? What other conclusions could you make? So would you conclude that the majority of people will support this person in becoming superintendent? So think about the different conclusions that you could lead to or assert based on your sample. And then looking at the second one, almost everyone in student government at Smallville High School supports the new recreation center. Therefore, most of the student body supports the new recreation center. So you want to look at the sample, right? What's interesting here is that they only surveyed people in the student government. So is that very representative of people in the high school? I don't know about you guys, but I went to a high school with about 3,000 students, and I think the student government was made up of about 12. So, and these are, and would you argue those 12 people who are involved in student government, so the student body president and the treasurer, and these people that were elected by everybody in basically a popularity contest, would you say that those people are representative of the entire student body of 3,000? So think of it that way. You may have went to a very small high school, which is a little different story, but you get the reason. So you want to also answer what argument forms are used in the scenario. How can you tell? So is this deductive or inductive logic? And how do the premises support the conclusion? And by what criteria can you classify different argument forms? So we're talking there about the difference between deductive logic and inductive logic, just to clarify. So in your paper, you're basically just analyzing the arguments. Pull it apart as much as possible. So tell me in the paper, why might I assert that these premises are weak? Why would you say that no, just because 75% of respondents in a random survey of 1,000 residents said that they supported this baseball stadium doesn't mean that the majority of the population supports the project. So you could say that perhaps somehow the sample, the survey, was not representative. Or you could say that maybe there are 1 million people in Smallville. So maybe Smallville's not so small. And that's not unbelievable because there's 6 million people in Los Angeles, right? So would 1,000 residents of Los Angeles be enough of a sample to generalize to the entire population of 6 million people? So then it starts to become iffy, right? So these are great because these are ways that you may be able to possibly pick apart this argument. All right. Now, any questions? So that kind of wraps up our live session for this week. If you have a question, go ahead and type it into the box now, and that way we can address it for the entire course, or for the entire student population. Right, so we do like to end our live sessions with what we call the roping closure, and this is a learning gem. So similar to what you're writing about in your journals, but we're just talking about for our session this evening, our live session. What is one key thing that you learned this evening from the live session? So please type your key, and it should be no longer than one sentence. Basically, it should fit in a couple of lines in that chat menu. We like to sometimes say at Fremont, it should fit inside of a fortune cookie, on a little paper that's in a fortune cookie. So it shouldn't be much longer than that. One sentence or just a few words on your key learning gem. That's our roping closure. Please do type that, and that makes double sure that you get counted in attendance this evening. I will stay on the line for a little while after this in case you want to ask me any independent questions. Also, you can email me or call me at 323-834-8050. Thank you so much for coming to the live session this week. Please take a look at the learning gems of your classmates. And thank you so very much. We'll see you next week.